Shall we get started or shall we wait on
I
somebody?
think we'll do that. Everybody's here actually, except for, no, everybody's here. Okay, I'm using the restroom. Okay, so he's gonna be here in a minute. We can wait 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, the brain's working now. Conversational lunch, they said, brains are working.
Well, you know, we're gonna start out this afternoon kind of hearing from you and hearing from you about this morning and some of the things that you've been thinking about or that you thought about as we were speaking. I like to talk, but this afternoon to start, I'd like to hear from you. Because what I brought to you this morning, and sometimes I get caught up on the fact that I have a lot of information I want to share. I also want to hear about what all this means for you and what are the things you can take back and what is your system like and how can it manage some of the things we've talked about today. So I want to hear from you all this afternoon for a little bit before we move on to the trainer approval process, okay? I think it's a good way to get started this afternoon. And I know that some of you work in the same place. So if y'all want to sit together and have conversation about some of the questions I want to ask before you share them with the group. For those of you who are flying solo, having some opportunity to think things out and jot them down before you share them, I think is a good thing. So if you want to sit with your groups, if you're not sitting with your groups, this would be a good time to do that as we prepare for the afternoon. So I first want to start out with, we started out talking about the training system and how our training system is built, how we have a steering committee, a centralized steering committee, but a lot of the work is done by regional training centers and by IHS. And some of the functions that those entities have. I would like for you to first think about creating a system or looking at the system that you have. What are some of the things that would work for you? Some of the things that would be a challenge for you within the context of the world that you live in. And then thirdly, what are some of the things that maybe don't work today, but you would like to work towards in the future? So it's 3 questions about your training system that I would like for you to think about, okay? Number 1, what does your system look like? How does it fit in within the context of what we talked about this morning? What would be some challenges for you in developing a system that was regionalized or a system that met the needs of a larger group of people? And then what are some of your visions for what you would like to see in your world? What is your vision for some of the things you would like to implement into your training system?
Was the second one? What our system look like? Second one.
What would be some of the challenges in implementing some of these things in your system? And then your vision.
there's a system approach to what's being done. What does your system look like? Okay, essentially, this is So what we have and this is the one that this is the aid prematurely and what it will be. So course we hear this will be out and that's so this one isn't as here, but this one is we're going to be doing training. So what does So then the question would be, as we look through, where is it possible to bring in now, of our date, one of the big things. That likes all this stuff. So I just find out that there's like, you don't mind talking, ask questions. Now recognize.
quantitative research. So trying to out of 10.
So how are we doing?
Oh,
Okay. Okay, few more minutes.
it is, if you don't see the gaps, then you're not able to fill them. So that's why it's important to say what are the gaps. How does the system at the moment, what does it look like? With the bar that has been set, so we have to, I mean, it is taking them, at least the training, she said 13 years. So we have just been on that 1 year. In that 1 year, they all over the place. So what can we say? There's a bar there. So what does it look like? In comparison.
Well, in comparison, it's like a baby.
That's why I'm saying 1 out of 10.
But that's not a fair way to do it. That's not a fair way to do it.
Because if I say to myself 1 out of 10, then in my mind, with the vision, I then strive to get to at least 6
So
out
for
of
me,
10.
if I say 1 out of 10, it's like, what have we been doing? What are we working so hard for?
Yeah, that nothing will be 0 out of 10.
That's right.
So that a little bit is one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is nothing is 0.
And
out of
without
10.
a 1, there isn't a 2, 3, or 4.
I think we're doing 10 out of 10. That's what we have right now.
Should we helping this debate?
Are we ready?
No, second
Question.
question.
Sorry.
Okay.
Most of these cultures
Because
are
then the
story
next
cultures.
person is help us. But if
it's
we give
always
ourselves
longer
9 out of 10, then the next person.
Absolutely.
That's like,
That's right.
we're done.
It's like you have to start your own model.
And we have to measure where we are now
Yeah,
in compared to where we were a year ago.
yes.
So what are the
That's-
progresses that we've made?
That's how you survive in a world of process.
Yeah.
In that, you have to understand that you have to start somewhere and you make progress. And the progress may not have been giant steps, it may have been baby steps, but everything was a step forward. And it's your system.
So when people talk about best practice, obviously there is a standard.
That's right.
So if you're going to say this is best practice, you then measure yourself
No,
against
but this is not.
What field they go for again? What field? Professional. He's thinking in terms of Likert scale, right?
Yeah.
Trying to measure something from the best
Yeah.
and as dilutes.
But this isn't, you can't put this into.
But it
you
is a
can't
way, it
measure
is a
in
way of
that space.
thinking. So maybe we can use that as another process, but maybe use yours as a process to say this is where we're now.
Well, developing your
And
own.
as you're
your
developing
own
your
outcomes.
process, this process of yours going to that as it goes. How about that? Is that good?
We had,
I'm not very-
okay, in our process, for example, in our process of workshop development, we had people who were process people and we had people who were task people. And task people have no patience with process. They want to be able to immediately measure it. And they want, perfection immediately, which is never gonna happen. Because you have to, in order to take people with you, you have to be really patient with the fact that there are different levels and they're moving at the speed. Okay, so you set your goals, but understand that that goal may not be reached in a long time, but that's why you have the objectives, the smaller goals that will take you there, because those are the ones that are going to keep you engaged.
So you, let me use what you say. There's some place where you want to reach to. So what is that place? My scaling is how far away from reaching that. So then that spares me to, what is it that I need to put in place so that I get there? Whether I go there on a bicycle or on a, that's a different thing. But if I correctly measure myself, that there's a bar there, I want to reach to it. But maybe what is it that I need to do to get to that?
That's right. What are the steps?
Yes.
And projecting, you know, what is it going to take to get to this? And then what is it going to take to get to there? Because you're not going to be able to get there until you've taken the
First
steps to get.
And actually, if we're really honest, we haven't actually defined what
Your goal
there
is. For example, in ours, when we started talking about our workshop outlines, we talked about what is our ultimate goal. And our ultimate goal was that our families and our kids would be provided with the best services possible. And so what is it going to take to do that? You know, what are the things that within the scope of what we have to offer? Because there are things that we can't offer. We can't be the answer to all things, right? So within the scope of what we can do, what are the things that we can do to get to that? So that when I go home at night, I know that I've done everything I could so that families and kids are being served well in Ohio.
So the thing is, the most important thing is that we have stood up
Mhm.
and we actually taking the first step
That's right.
towards our goal.
Yeah.
And
But you have to have that vision
yeah,
of where you want to be, because that's what's going to keep you going.
So both of you are right.
And we kind of know what the goal is. We kind of do. It's to be a hub and a resource of training, all of which brings best practice and better outcomes. So that's the broad out there.
Yeah.
But for me, and it's my big, I've got to focus on,
The steps.
if I look there, I'm
It's
going
too
to
far.
stop. So, okay, what are the things that, okay, we've gone from 3 trainers to 3, and we've trained.
So you've met a goal.
So it's like, okay, we're on track. And when I look, I'm like, we're inadvertently going along. We're doing a lot of this without being intentional about it. So the challenge is to be more intentional.
Are our friends from India ready?
Are you ready for us?
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start out with the question about, you know, what does our system look like? What is it, you know, that our system or your system is like? Where are you at today? I guess it would be another way to put that. Who wants to get started? Okay.
So we have a tentative training policy. So we follow a certain policy, a certain procedure, policy in place. But after looking at this, I think we want to do it with more detail and very specific. Yeah, that's one. And we have training calendars in place, both for trainers and also the locations where we're going to train and do the workshops. That's two. And we have modules, thanks to Vivian Lane and we have a training facility in place, and we have consultants to help us. And anytime we need wisdom, so we can always reach out to them. And in our training, we have a professional, doctor, in fact. So she is a family physician, so that gives that is about. And, now Jane,
So what is the focus of your system?
To make sure we provide sensible, understandable training to the caregivers who come.
And so right now in your system is providing standardized workshops
Yes,
for your population.
yes,
And you have kind of the nuts and bolts of doing it. You're running kind of like a regional training center.
yes.
You schedule it, you have a place to schedule it, you have trainers identified for it. What kind of challenges do you see?
Our diversity is huge, even in one district or one state. We have so much that's happening. I was just telling Sam that even with the same state, both of the regions that we each come from, the levels of understanding or the levels of understanding of a particular concept is huge. It's different. So we have, when we've taken this material out, we've had to, as much as possible, contextualize it to our audience. And most of our caregivers, which is a big challenge for us, are uneducated. So to make them understand what a brain is and the impact, that takes so much time. So we have to think through what is important at that moment, because we don't have 3 days of training with them. So we break it down 1 hour or 2 hours max a day, and we run it for a week. So in that 2 hours, how can I make somebody understand a concept that they really don't know? So that is our biggest challenge. And we have, so in this, when I look at the module, I know everything is important, but what is important to that audience sometimes, when I come back and we discuss, we're like, okay, we need to do this. So sometimes what happens, which I want to talk to you about as well, is I would do page 3, and then when I come back and revise, and then Sam says, did you do page 2? And I'm like, yes, I did, but I didn't do 100% because I didn't think it was necessary. So he's like, okay, from this context, this is important. So I go back and I do page 2. So I'm just giving you an example. So that is our biggest challenge. And the need is huge. Our country as such right now doesn't see the importance of child abuse, doesn't see how important the child is. We are very adult-centric. So for us to change that thought process, just among ourselves as professionals, takes time. Now to get it down to the smallest bit of the people who work there firsthand is a big thing. And if you open up training, everybody wants to come because the boss has said all of them. Some of them are sitting and sleeping there, so you don't know if the knowledge is passed. And how do you wake somebody who is, we made fun of this just now when you were talking about it. There's one lady who was the head of the organization, came, she slept through the entire training, but she was there.
that's good. I remember when Ruby said she put 2 columns, one left. She said, you've got to send people to workshop for one reason, if they don't know about what they're doing. And that is our lack of motivation. And we see a lot of people
So again, the training in our concept, or rather it's commonly understood that if you're not doing well, go to it. So that has to change, that paradigm has to change. So that is a difficulty again for us. People who sign up and come for training, that's a good thing. We have a lot of them coming in like that, and they feel that they've taken back a whole lot and they want more. But the grassroots, the ones who firsthand work with the children, that's a little difficult for us to break through. So what we do is we don't call them into our training center. We rather go into their homes and orphanages and then sit with them and train. So that has worked for us well. Then we have limited trainers, and sometimes when you open up training, hundreds of people come in, like 150, 200. There was one time where the entire the Church of North India, there is a unit called Navbharat, it's an NGO, they have a lot of people working. They sent about 150 people, and most of them were older men. So the communication, the language barriers, all that, like for example, um, the last training that I did, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, the last training that I did, I could not use the word trauma because they would immediately shut down. So I had to use the word emotional ill health. So I had to keep saying that, and they were fine with that. They were okay with it. So things like that. You
But
don't
is it based because of their own experiences or what?
own experience, and really they don't think there is a problem. They don't want to recognize that there is a problem. Another example. As much as I want to say don't beat your children, if I say that, I know I've already put a barrier. They won't listen to the rest of my training. And no matter how well I dress up, doesn't work. So those are our barriers that
So what is your vision for
oh,
what you would
vision.
like to do?
About 5 pages.
Just kidding.
So the vision is to keep doing what we're doing without getting, without losing hope that we will change, and we are changing. We make some kind of difference, but then we will see it. Now, right now, according to what we are looking at, is I think we are at the best time of our year, coming to the right place, right training, right people. Thank you for that, because we were going to go back and hire people, and I'm glad we're here doing all this because we need trainers. And like you were saying, if there is a job opening, they're just looking for the sake of looking, or they are retired and they want to do something interesting. So we want to make sure that we have the right kind of people doing the right thing. And Sam was saying, competent, confident, and committed trainers. That's what we want to look at. And I'm glad that we have this, because as an NGO, our hearts are bigger than our brains sometimes, and we want to give them a job.
Yeah.
So we don't want to do that, and we are good at doing that. So we don't want to do that. So that's he falls for anybody who cries. And the back-end process, as much as it's an NGO, we don't want to take it lightly. The back-end process should be as good as any corporate that comes into place. So we should be accountable to what we do. And even the person who's starting out with us should know what we are looking at, and what their performance is going to be, and what are the gaps that and who do they talk to. All that needs to be in place. The biggest thing is for us to develop and adapt the curriculum to suit the different levels of people we need. The most important thing, I think, is we've done a lot of training, but how good is our evaluation, and how good are we making sure that they learn what we want them to learn? So that is my biggest takeaway as the head of training. I need to know that what I do makes sense, because I could keep doing for the love of it that isn't making any sense. So.
That's great.
Excellent.
Very nice. Does anyone have anything they would like to ask?
So I missed the part. So you already have a property, a structure.
Yes, we have a training room.
Okay. And you are full time there.
Yes, I am full-time.
Okay.
So is it a particular geographical area that you all cover, or is it a pretty expansive?
Now, the thing is, like I was saying, the first day we were here, our boss goes out and does a lot of children program. So since we have not heard this word trauma and we don't think it's important, he is like the guy who makes way for us. So he does a lot of children's programs, and then he introduces, we call it the awareness. So he would just talk 5 minutes about it, 10 minutes about it. And then Sam continues the conversation with them. And then once he thinks that they are interested, they want it, then he sends them to me. Then I take care of it. I schedule trainings. If we need to go there, we go there and train. If we need to have them come in, we do that. But we've been trying to train all different areas of the country, and we trained most of South India.
We also schedule, because we want to emphasize on children homes nearby, because in the place that we stay at, we have at least less than 5-10 kilometers. We have at least 20 of the children homes. So we want to first go and reach out to the children that's going really well. So in our calendars, we plan once in 3 months to here. Then schedule it outside of the station.
Well, and it sounds like a good vision to have is that at some point you might have trainers in different areas.
So as
That
soon
can
as
be
you
your
put out
training.
that chart of your map, I was telling Sam, yes, that's what we need to focus
Yeah.
on. Because Ruby and Lynn have been encouraging us and seeing how important that we get our basic
Mhm.
stuff right, because they see us doing that in India, so I think.
That's great. Thank you.
In terms of, because I think the thing is for you assessing transfer benefits, so you want to make sure that they're doing that. Would that be the next step for you?
Yes,
Okay. And would that be to have follow-ups? Do you think?
we
or-
do have follow-ups, so what happens is I go train, either Sam or our boss's wife, she's also the boss. She calls and finds out what they've done, what they do. So we have a very good rapport with our NGOs around us because we've been there for 10 years now. So it's easy to call, find out what worked for you, what didn't work for you. Is the training long? Is the training short? Do you want more? Do you think it's fine? So we do that. But what I was saying in terms of transfer learning is, what are you doing with what you've done? That is what I want to know.
That's right.
And can I see what you're doing? Can I see you demonstrate what you're doing? Can I talk to your children and find out, did it happen? What the parent is saying, house parent is saying, is that what happens? Because you can make up stories if you're giving them feedback, but
Yeah.
I need to see.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Who would like to go next? Anybody on this side?
Yeah, okay.
Y'all go next?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about your system.
Yeah. Yeah, because we are a training center, we have kind of more than 10 years of doing training in Ethiopia. And we train people who are working with children, parents, Sunday school teachers, school teachers, and those who are working with children. We have two kinds of training, long-term and short-term trainings. The short-term one is like it could be 3 days or 5 days on basic skills and knowledge on how to work with children, like building relationship with children or something else, which is related with children. And we do also TOT. We have been that for many years. We develop trainers and we mentor also trainers. We make them kind of co-facilitators with us whenever we go to the countryside. For example, if we send one trainer from our center, the other trainer will be a local person that is trained by us before. Yeah. So we go with them and we train people so that we have two purposes in doing that: developing this person as a resource person for that area and multiplying ourselves. That's what we do. And we do it in our center. We have center-based training and mobile training too. We travel a lot throughout the country. We have training philosophy. For example, our training is relational based. We strongly believe in building relationship with the trainees. And we, for example, if we have a 5-day training, the first day will be more or less what you do here in our training. Yeah, we play together, we laugh together, we know one another, and finally we create a family. And that is a very conducive environment to train them. And we believe also in doing experiential learning cycle. we allow them to pass through some kind of experience, the trainees, and then we reflect on that experience. And then we give them some theories based on the topics that we are about to deliver. And then we allow them to practice it in the classroom in simulated situation. And then we send them out to the outreach so that they can test what they learn in class in the community. That's, we call it experiential learning cycle. That's what we do. Nowadays, we are, as Bule said earlier, we are trying to decentralize our training. Because Ethiopia is a big country, it is hard for them to come to our center from far from the countryside. So we need to have some kind of pilot or extension program in those areas. That's what we are now trying. We have some challenges. This is what we do. If you have something to add, you can.
No, I just want to mention two things. First thing is we have these values that we think should be part of our DNA, who we are. And one is multiplication. We strongly believe in multiplication. But the way we were doing it was either through like our long-term training or diploma program, which takes about 18 months. And it's time consuming. And the idea of coaching. And the second one is the way we want to standardize. That is, we were looking actually for those who are really qualified, especially with their attitude. So it has been a challenge for us actually to even employ trainers who just can't pick. We really want to make sure that these people have the heart, the commitment to do the work. So one thing we are seeing, we're taking from this, we can actually design a mechanism to multiply with short time, with less expense. And we can also enable our trainers, because we have now about 140 graduates from our diploma program this is the seventh batch that we are having. We thought like they were our trainers. We can use them anytime with no standard, with no measuring stick. So we are actually taking that from today's discussion.
One of the things that we've learned, what we were hearing from our constituents was that they had training needs that we were taking a long time to meet because we were wanting to make things standardized, and very formal. And that's when we started focusing more on allowing trainers to develop their workshops because they could do it a lot quicker than we could in doing our standardization. And not only then would that give us the training, but it would give us the trainer. And so that's one of the benefits is, there's benefits to standardized curriculum in the consistency of it, but there's also benefits to being nimble to meet the needs of the training population. And so you have to find a balance with both of those.
Yeah, concerning materials, we have different materials, curriculums on different topics prepared, and some are translated into Amharic, adopted from another organization, and some are developed locally, in-house, but still we need to standardize that material. That's what we have seen from this session. By the way, this is a timely training for us.
That's brilliant.
It fits to our need.
That's brilliant.
Thank you very much for inviting us here.
You know what's exciting, if I can add on what you're doing there and what I'm hearing you say and tying it back in, the trainings that are developed by others
Mm.
and can even be standardized in that we monitor them for them to do what it is they said they were going to do and following the objectives they said they wanted. So to some degree, it may not be like our core training standardized in that way, but we get standardization by saying you develop this, we've approved it, and now we expect you to train it like this, and if you modify it, let us know.
Mm. Mm.
Or you step in, as Beth Anna said, step in from time to time and just review, creating even an opportunity for you to go in and to review with a clear picture of their agenda and how they said they were going to deliver what their objectives are, that you can literally sit there and check off and say, yeah, this is being done the same way. So you can standardize
Yeah.
in another way.
Do you have a question? Like in India, we don't have that about it. So if we were to conceptualize something and we don't have a reference, what do we do?
Well, that's a real tough one, and I actually gonna let Beth Ann answer that one. I'll give a quick answer that I see in terms of what can be done, is that there's the whole process that we use about scoping the literature, and when we go out and scope literature, we do a lot of that research ourselves. And I think we all need to learn how to do that. And that would be something that would be good to teach all of you. Do you have another answer for that, Beth Ann?
Well, I think that, you know, when I think about different levels of evidence, I don't know if they showed you, we had developed this circle about different levels of training. You know, where one is personal experience. I think the value is in being transparent about where your information came from. Okay, so being able to say, from my experience, this is what happened. Or you can say all the way to the other end, I have read research that determined this. Okay, so that's from one end of the continuum to the other. And so I think that as long as you reference where the information came and what the level is, I think that you're doing your due diligence on it. I don't know if that was the question you were asking.
Go ahead. So, say for example, if Sam thinks he knows everything. I'm sorry. Sam thinks
What he does, but.
But he's not sure.
No, okay, Sam thinks he knows everything, and say I'm writing this module. If he tells me to write what he thinks, that I think it could be a possibility it is not, then I'm in a situation because as him being somebody who's of influence to my module making, I'm not speaking the truth because I don't know if that is what it is, and probably it must be one time experience that he had. So that doesn't count for the 99 that is not done.
Right. Or even if you had 100 experiences of it and they weren't right, they're still wrong. But I think it's where when you're talking to someone about their outline, when something like that happens, and there's something that you know that might take you to a place where you need to check it out. You know, you can say, you know, that I've been hearing or reading some things that contradict what you're saying, or maybe a little different from what you're saying. Let's do a little research and see what we can find out about what others are saying about this. Let's look at another perspective.
And the other thing we do, you know, we talked about this, about the importance of consulting with the multitude. There are people who are experts out there in different things, and it really behooves each and every one of us to begin to know who are those experts that are not tied to our system in such a way that they would be influenced by things that could send them off track, but who might be those persons that we can throw ideas out to. The other way of presenting information that maybe you don't agree with at times would be, it's been, by how you say it, it's been suggested that maybe, what do you think about this? So we present it as a question, and or we have to really just simply go back and say, until I really have more evidence that this is the case, this is something that I really can't share in the training. And we sometimes have to be bold and take those risks and say those things. You know, in training, people will stand up and tell you how things should be done and what things are, and you know they're absolutely wrong. I mean, and there are trainer skills and how to deal with that. Well, as trainer writers and training writers, you know, when the people are telling us what to write in curriculum, especially if they think this is right and they've had one experience in their whole lifetime, it's like, we need more evidence.
Yeah, and the trainer needs to be transparent about saying that this is my experience. Because then you don't make the assumption that it's
Written in stone somewhere.
right.
Yeah, written stones. It's a tough one. I mean, I think we all face it again and
Yes.
again in terms of looking at people who get passionate about it. And as a trainer, and I mentor a lot of trainers, work with trainers. I've had trainers many times and start to give a story. It's sort of like a personal story or something we've heard, and I'm listening to this and thinking, oh my word, you know, this is really off track, and we have to address those things.
I was going to ask in the same lines because when we started the session, we talked about the RPCs, regional training centers. You mentioned the needs are different, you know, as they speak to best practices. But in your experience, how do you put this? If one person had worked for so many years, and then he says, "I've done this, and I've seen this. This is the best practice." And how do you
Experience.
It's your best practice. Yeah, well, I think that's always been the challenge, is that when that it's kind of like that pull and tug between researchers and clinicians, for example. You know, where clinicians say, we've been actually on the field working this, we know this. But researchers are saying, but we've done the research and we've looked at different things, and this is what the research is saying. So it's kind of like the ongoing focus of trying to find balance. Because I think that there's right in both sides. I think that you can't disregard either of those. But I think that sometimes research will disprove what clinicians have said has worked. And again, it goes to the different variables that create success. It's like, what is it that created success for you? Maybe it was not the intervention, but your relationship to your client. Okay, so it's that give and take. You don't know which is causing what, and so you have to be really careful. And so I say to clinicians, you know, you can talk about what your experiences as a practitioner have been, but then you also need to be very transparent about saying that's been my experience. But the research that I've seen says this, either verifies or doesn't verify. You know, that for me is all you can do. You know, sometimes, especially in our field, there isn't a lot of research.
Right.
So how can you say this is evidence-based when no one has researched it? Or when the research has been biased? So it makes it challenging. If the research was done with white middle-class Americans, and you're in a world where that's not who you're talking about, then has anyone considered the impact of those differences? And so you have to be able to, I think, be cognizant of that, and then kind of figure out what is that going to look like. That's why you're adapting your curriculum, because you know that that world is different. How you say things, you know, what people are open to hearing, you have to find the way that works for your place.
But how do I know this is what I need to take and this is what I need to let go? Because we do have a lot of research, and I don't know. See, everybody who's passing out of a social work college has a research.
Yeah.
So how do I know they did what they did? So we don't have a standardized.
Now, I mean, in the United States, they have the evidence-based clearinghouses, the California one that she was talking about. There's attempts to do that. I think that at some point, you have to trust your instincts, that you've done due diligence to find out what works best, and then be open to changing it. if you're disproved. Because that's the other thing,
Mm.
is that what we find acceptable, like when I was doing foster care, the things that were the best practice, now people are saying are not the best practice. But at that time, that's what we were trained because that was best practice. So it's that flexibility of knowing as we learn new things, then our curriculum needs to be alive. It needs to be constantly moving with the changes that happen, the knowledge and the research that happens. But all you can do at the moment that you're writing that curriculum is go by what you have at that moment.
And I'd say, learn to scope the literature, learn to.
Would we talk how to do?
Well, and yeah, we can, we're probably not, but you're gonna see Karen, you're gonna see Diane on Sunday. And talking about that with respect to curriculum development, because that's all part of curriculum development, to make sure you do a literature scope and scope it really clear. But let's just break it down in simple terms. Get on Google. Just get on Google, look at articles, and if you can get enough.
Make sure they're legitimate.
Yeah, but if you can get enough research or resources that come from legitimate people and sites, and you're gonna have to do a little bit of work on that. But there's certain ones that are gonna start springing up to you that are, gonna be legitimate, that really start to support something. That's starting to give you some evidence that that practice is or is not a good practice. The other thing of it is, I go back to find people that you can call and contact that are experts in the area. Child sexual abuse, contact Sally Ditch here at IHS and ask her who else is maybe be a good person to contact on that. If you're looking on child development, I mean, we can contact Dan Beeler. I mean, we can connect you with people that have expertise in certain areas that have scoped the literature already, that will give you that balance of information. We know people all over the US and all over the globe that have expertises in different areas. And so if you're really puzzled about something, throw it out to the multitude and get some feedback on that, so you don't feel like you're left alone.
And, I think, your universities, because they're very well aware of your world and what are the best practices or the issues that are specific to your part of the world. I think that's important to contact those folks and kind of start getting an idea of who they are and building relationships with them, because they really can be assets.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that because I think that sort of fed into my relationship with my university, particularly to with child welfare, and that spurred them to do some research of their own, and that gave us a new bold piece of literature as well. So I think the exact thing of not having enough research and then connecting with them, making them aware of things, and actually bring that research that's relevant to your context.
Well, and also sometimes that encourages the gaps. For those folks that focus on research, you bring it to them and that might, create an opportunity for them to do some research that will be helpful to your context.
I wanted to ask something. I just wanted to ask you, because you mentioned this, that is an issue in many countries, that if you are starting talking about corporal punishment or physical abuse, then you are losing the sympathy of the group. So how can you then tackle that? Or how can you, do you use any specific method or
We
content?
do a lot of videos from campus. So we do talk about it, but not in the initial.
Sure. No, but no. What I would be, because also here in the States, there is an ongoing debate about the ban on corporal punishment or not. And I'm just curious, what are the arguments of those members who are pro corporal punishment?
You got beaten when you're growing up. You didn't turn out to be that bad.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's
That's
a
worldwide
child.
and they feel that it was useful for them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Look how good I turned out.
and you're fine. You're not traumatized. I don't see anything wrong with you. You are as behaved as I wanted you to be. It's just a slap. There's no marks. After I hit, I love. I explain after I hit.
And it will also be add a little bit of controversy. There's also a new piece of literature that came out recently to say that the whole timeout thing with the kid does not
Yeah.
actually help.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go.
See
Just
a
throw that there.
Yeah.
Throw it and look at it.
Yeah.
And some people also hot by them.
Oh, yeah, I know, but that's a force sport.
Yeah.
We know that.
And if we
This has
talk
been
into a
there.
Christian group,
yeah.
spare the
Yeah.
rod and spoil the
spoil the
child.
Yes.
So then you put it in context of, well, if you're gonna do that, which comes from the Old Testament,
Yeah.
let's stone
Yeah,
people
follow all the other.
Yeah.
So
Everything.
what I do is I explain how much time David spent with Solomon. So do you have that patience to spend with your children? And in spite of him spending so much time with Solomon, see how Solomon turned out. That's because of the beating. So there you go.
And
So
don't you think it's also, I mean, I think we both take that on in the context of our cultures. For us, it's such a big thing, and we have to just go slow with it and just keep saying the same thing over. And we use humor to take it on, and and then bring in, say, well, just go check out this guy because this guy did some research on it, and it actually doesn't predict the outcome that you think it does, but maybe predict something negative too. So you're just putting little seed each time you're with them.
that's true.
You're just breaking it down a little bit. We had one lady, and she did the training, and she was obviously big into smacking kids. And so we were. So the motto for the training was put down the sticks. Okay, let's put down the sticks. No, we're going to put down the sticks. So her testimony when she came back was that she had shared the handout with her neighbor, and she was sitting and she was showing her neighbor, because the neighbor apparently was beating the child every day. And so she was showing the neighbor and said, "No, you see, this is what they were saying. And it's not good to smack kids every day." So apparently she was thrilled because the neighbor said, "Well, I can't not beat, but I won't beat every day." So she
Something is better than.
She felt like it. So then we were like, so we're breaking these cultural, long-standing things down. Just sometimes takes time, and we just have to keep saying the same thing.
Our, getting back to our colleagues, because we're kind of chasing a little bit of a rabbit. So did you all tell us what your vision is?
Challenge.
Oh, we were with your challenges.
Yeah.
Okay.
The challenge we have is, as we already said, standardizing our training
Right.
materials and our training philosophy in the system itself need to be standardized. That's what we discover, and that's what we are aiming to do. And the other challenge we have is paying for training is not the culture. In other way, if you attend the training, you will be paid.
Oh, okay.
That's the training.
Especially with government
Oh,
officials.
yeah.
You
And
can vote the person.
even NGOs, they pay for the participants.
Yeah.
So when you ask them to pay, it's unusual. It's not common. So we struggle with financial.
It's shocking. It's
Yeah,
very
that's another challenge, and that's why we have shortage of trainers.
Right.
We try to involve volunteers rather than.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What's our vision? I think.
Yeah, I think for our vision, we can say it like short term and long term. The short term, we really determined we are exploring all possibilities to develop a system, especially infrastructure like the one that you're using. We've been exploring Moodle, we've been exploring SharePoint, and so on. So one judge from the US has donated a big data center server for us. We're trying to develop a database to have our basic survey. We are profiling all our clients. So we want to put that maybe with GIS and so on in there. And also we really want to have like the ones that you have here. We want to standardize our programs and put them in that system. So either we'll go with Moodle server, or we're also exploring if we can have our website is developed by using Joomla, open source. So if we can get some templates that will put like calendar. So we're also exploring to see if we kind of have an intranet within our house. So that's the short term. Like we have been talking about for a long time. So I think it's time now for us to go into action. And the bigger vision is we really want to be a standard for this kind of training in Ethiopia. That's the inspiration that we're taking from this institution. You have been doing things meticulously, breaking it down into pieces and then trying to set a standard. So we want to
We want to be IHS for the Ethiopia.
serve the government
Right.
and churches with quality training.
When they thank training, they
Yes.
thank you.
That's what we want.
Yeah, that's great. Sarah, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, well, in our system, we're in the beginning of implementing foster care programs. Less than 5% of the kids who are protected are in foster families in Brazil. Most of them are still in residential care programs. So there's a great need of training. And we, in our organization, we have been training mainly adoptive families, some foster families also. But now there's a great need of cities who need to start their foster care programs, and they're looking for us and asking for help to train their trainers. One of the problems that we have is that many times these people who are going to become the trainers of these foster families or even adoptive families, they're not very good professionals, or they don't have the heart for it. Okay, so this is a problem that we face. Another problem that we face is that it's not a pattern in our country. For example, of how long should be this training. So each city does it in one way. In some places they say they train it, they really don't. Many authorities, we were talking about that during lunchtime, many authorities, they have an idea that training is just a classroom, where there's a teacher teaching something to someone. So they think that if they establish we should have longer hours of training, then we're not going to have anyone fostering. Okay, so I'm afraid of that. So I think one of our challenges is to change this paradigm, to help with this paradigm shift. And I already started with our challenges. So something that another problem that we face is that there's no training for kinship. So many kids, they return to their extended families, and then very soon they're going to be back into the system because there was no training or either follow up, and this is a big problem in Brazil.
It's a big problem in the United States. It's like, they really encourage kinship care. I think a lot of times it's a budgetary issue more than anything else, but they don't provide them the training and support so that they can be successful.
Yes. And a challenge that we do have is that we have a reduced staff doing a lot of work. So there's this big demand, Brazil is a huge country. We became kind of a reference, okay, so there's this big demand, but we don't have people and we don't have money, okay, so we need funding also. our challenge also, and our vision for the future. Well, we dream with a national model, okay?
That's good.
We've been advocating for that, but there's still a long way to go. I think we need to make our first steps, maybe becoming a model in our city and in our area, in our region, okay, and showing people that this model is good, so that we might spread it out. And some of the things that I've been thinking while we're here is to sit down with some strategic people, with some strategic authorities, you know, that I know that have their heart for this, that have a better understanding, and maybe starting some conversation in a national level where we could plan some strategies, you know. Of course, in Brazil, we need to start with regions. We do have some professionals or some organizations that could be a reference in their regions, in their own areas. So I think this is really good. Yeah, I think that's it.
So it's kind of almost like you're at a birthing stage, aren't you, of the process?
It's scary. It's
Yeah.
very good, but I'm very sincere to say that it's scary before. We really have this challenge of understanding, you know, what path are we going to follow.
Yeah, it really sounds like, you know, one of your tasks might be to create the allies, the collaborations, because, you know, that's going to give you more resources. And if you have like-minded people, then they're going to be able to buy into the process, and that'll take some of the weight off of you all, and you share that weight, because it is a heavy weight to carry something like that. And the more people that are working towards the same goal, the better it is for your system, and creating it. But I think the idea of starting in your own little area, that's what's going to create the buy-in. You know, when people see your successes and the difference that it's making, then they're going to be more likely to want to join the team. But yeah, you've got your work cut out. So what's your vision?
We're in the southeast of Brazil, in the state of Minas Gerais. So we're about 6 hours driving from São Paulo, 5 hours driving from Brasilia. We're halfway. We're in a very strategic area.
That's
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
And I think this is positive that we're not in such a huge city as São Paulo. Things are a lot harder to be implemented in São Paulo or even Brasilia. But we are a large city. We are about 800,000 people. So our city is, after the capital of our state, our city is the largest city. So if we do have something going on in Berlândia that is well done, already we do have some things going on that became a good reference, okay? So it's good that we're kind of, people look at us and they say, wow, if that's working there, we must respect, must see, check what's going on. So this is good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Who would like to go next? Okay.
Well, I think you heard. Our system, if you like, has not been as intentional as the models that you presented. And I feel like when we were talking about it, we said we're almost like a toddler. Like we're walking, we're taking the steps, and we're moving in the right direction. I think as you were talking, there were a lot of things there. We've actually started doing that. Taking the first steps.
That's good.
So I think, like Andre said, the timing of this for us is excellent. Because going forward, I think we have tools in our hand because of the curriculum that Lynn and Ruby have taught. We've got something that we can use. The need is huge, absolutely overwhelming need. Caregivers and people are wanting information, they're wanting to know. So we have some things that we can use and we can train while we figure these other things out. And I mean, just wonderful timing, I think, because we can be more intentional about the things that we're doing, the strategic planning as we go forward. I think we have trainers in 4 places. We train out of the capital city, so that's where the training has been up to now. But we intentionally brought in, for the training of trainers, we brought in from 3 other cities.
Oh, okay.
So we now are placed in 4 different cities to be able to start training. So from the new year, we'll go and train with them, identify one more trainer, and then they can have a team of 2 that can train.
That's good.
And then we'll go to Mutare, which will give it we're going to train there at the end of February. So that will give us 5 cities that we can. So looking at that map, I think we've started, we've taken the first steps. So I think we've taken a lot of first steps, and obviously with lots of mentorship. I think we have the curriculum, and we kind of are diarising the training, scheduling training. I think in some ways we feel like we're holding back a horse. That if we let it go, it's and we're just, I don't know that we're ready for that. So and we have, this is my perspective to an extent. I think the 3 of us would give different perspectives to an extent. I think that we need to pace ourselves. I think that we have to. I really want us to. I loved your. I wrote that down. Competent, confident, and committed. I love that. And I think we've gone from 3 trainers to 13. So in a year, that's the growth that we've had. We've trained 400 people in module 1. But to work on our trainers and to really develop their depth and their capacity and the skill sets that they have. But to pace ourselves, I'd rather that we were still going in 3 years' time or 4 years' time and then hitting the thousands. Then we try and take that on in a year and then burn ourselves out and sweeping ourselves off the floor. We don't have a full-time person yet. So everybody does this on a volunteer basis.
Oh,
So yeah, we have 0 overheads currently. But if we're going to go where we want to, we're going to have to step into that space. So we've started making grant applications and we're waiting to, specifically relating to the training. The organization has been there for 5 years. The training has only been there for about a year and a bit. So the resources, obviously, resources and time resource are things that we need to work on. The vision is to be a training resource, really, for stakeholders across the spectrum in Chakra to bring best practice. There's a lot of terrible practice. We want to be able to resource government to be able to bring training, and we've been invited to do that now.
Oh, that's
to train social workers. So developing our resource bases now to bring the CSI in, for example, different things that we can bring in, but again, to be strategic about that, so that we can influence many sectors to bring better outcomes for kids in our country. Anything else? Others?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, who would like to go next? Alex? Don't you like the way I asked the question and then I voluntold you?
So Romania. Romania, we are about 20,000 people, 41 counties, and 7 to 12 regions, depends how you define. The training for caregivers in general is supposed to be done by the state officially, but as far as we can see, probably it has not great efficiency. Most of them, well, all of them are saying that they feel that they are not trained and not prepared for the job. Many abuses, probably 90% of the children are abused in the system, probably even more. even either if we speak about residential care or foster care. And now it comes about R4. We started about 5 years ago. And we developed a few programs mostly intuitively, starting from some of us who needed, like people like me who adopted and we saw the need. So we have TCC, probably this is that works the best. The first module, right? Here. We did it probably, I don't know, more than 3,000 people in total. And always there are more and more people asking for that. It's a huge need, and probably one of the pluses of that compared to what we have in Romania is it's very, very practical. Our system is very theoretical and not responding to the real needs. We have started 2 years ago. We have refresh camps for adoptive and foster families that are great. For the first time, families have the chance to come together, and we are taking care of them. We want to communicate, hey, you as parents, you are important. We want to feel you are taken care. Once a year, we had a summit where we have 40 plus workshops on different areas, a few webinars every year, and we had one secondary trauma and self-care course. We did it with a few people. Probably because we offer some quality, we have a more and more demanding trainings. For example, in January, we were going one of the counties, and the authorities there, they said, we'll bring all 500 foster care. Well, of course, at the beginning, they don't give us a lot of time, but they just really need training. So if I would say about what we did, I think probably has great relevance because it started from the need, is rooted in our values and vision, but it's not comprehensive and standardized. So because of that, we have gaps and uncovered areas in our system. And either if we speak about different needs that are not covered or different people or caregivers that are not covered. Challenging implementation. Probably one is funding. We do that for free. I mean, none of us is employed for that. And the state, yes, and are asking to do that more and more and more, but never pay for that. I mean, not for printing or transport or something like that. So we always offer that. We had to raise money from other parts to train. Well, corruption. I won't go into that really. Probably also building and proving competency and trust. So the authorities have trusted to the level that says, hey, we need that, and we're willing to pay for that. Diversity, you always have diversity between city and village, diversity between different categories of caregivers. I'm not saying these are bad, but there are challenges that we have to take into consideration. And I wrote, I don't know which one you said, creating the alliance, well, building with other people who have the same goal. Collaboration with, yeah. Simple. We would like to see a competency training plan that every caregiver receives the right training in the right time. Probably more than a few programs spontaneously, which again, I'm not there. I think it's great that we have. I think some of them we see very efficient. Like, for example, we spoke about camps. We had 200 people this year, and there is probably next year we'll have 600 people. Yeah, if we'll find the money for us, hopefully we'll do. Trainers in our counties, support groups for the support groups. That's also something that we develop. Resources. I don't know.
That sounds like y'all are doing some great work over there.
So probably the challenge is now to take.
It's kind of like formalize your system.
Yes, formalize the system.
Yeah.
what we need to have, what we have, what works, and how we are building the same way that we don't have those gaps or.
Yeah. Thank you. Dash. Is it Dash? Yeah.
In our organization, we don't have training system.
Mhm.
We are at the early stage of creating this system.
Mhm.
We had some experience before providing trainings for practitioners and for foster care. But now we think that we need to reorganize, restructure, and to put it on to use this competences-based approach. Because in Russian, in existing system, it's not enough understanding, but awareness about competences in general. The governmental, as we don't have standards in social work at all, because it's quite new area, it's developing area in society. Competences we see it as a challenge to convey people what is about knowledge and skills. It's just different things, and we need to be trained and developed and supported. So it's one task. On the other hand, the state system become closed, and it's don't want to be there to change. So NGO should be very careful with the initiatives, especially any initiatives that in any aspects can affect the system. It can be considered as an influence of the social policy and politics, and you will be punished for this. Last time we had a law that about this foreign agencies. So if NGO has label, receive label of foreign agent, it can be applied for grants, for government funds, and so it's life become more difficult. But on the other hand, what has been done by federal government? For example, in our system, all foster carers should be trained some 40 hours or 50 hours. And it's a responsibility of local authorities. More than that, they developed a curriculum for training foster carers. And nobody, everybody should strictly follow this curriculum. You can't divert. And it's 90% about existing system, legislation, payment, and only a few hours about trauma, about depression, So what we, as what our trainers did, we include as much as possible topics and hours to provide this that's why it was good and some organization asked us to train their trainers. So they will also receive the power to train foster cares, but they heard that we do something different, and that's why. So we understand that this approach based on competences, based on deeper understanding and deeper involving practitioners in the work in great demand. That's why our vision to become a resource center, training center, especially we haven't experienced how to monitor, evaluate, and how to gather evidence of our work, even if we have a small group. So I hope.
Yeah. It's a challenge. It sounds like a challenging environment for you.
But it's difficult because for EU it's very difficult to reach this governmental funds. Even there are huge amount of funds, but of money, but it's not we try to
I just wanted to add to what you were saying. Last night we had a discussion.
Could you speak a little
about
bit
this.
louder, Lana?
And I heard that, and she kind of mentioned it, saying that in the last 3 years, and 2 years ago was our last visit to St. Petersburg to Ludmila's organization. In that project that we worked for 2 years with them. So 2 years ago, we did not feel that as much as I heard it from her, what is felt now. She told me that the actual word social policy in Russian, they cannot mention it. They cannot put the word social policy when applying for funding. Anymore.
we had to delete this word from our website.
Well,
Because some people can see that you would like to influence.
oh, the policy.
Policy.
Policy is
It's
about
Russian, it's the same word.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's why. And if you
Yeah.
think about policy, but in Russian this is the same word that politics. And it's very
So I just wanted to add that I admire, this people. They can easily make a choice to go and do their job, the social work kind of job, with the government and get paid twice or 3 times more. But they don't want to. They want to work with that little freedom that they have. And it's been, the circle has been getting
Smaller and smaller.
smaller and smaller. But they make that choice. So I really admire that.
So your system you're developing in the midst of a lot of challenges.
If I may just add that I guess the whole context of Central and Eastern Europe and the transition during the 30 years could really help a lot with all those countries who are now developing their own systems, because all the controversies we've been through. So this is, I guess, a kind of backlash now. And this is in itself very interesting, and we should know much, much more about it. Because I don't see, but we are suffering from it, but we are not absolutely clear about the exact context or why and how is it happening. But I can see it in many other countries. And the other thing, I agree with Luda that most of these government-led projects or trainings are focusing on legal provisions primarily, and that's the safe side. You know, if you are describing the system, it doesn't hurt anyone. It's concrete, but when it comes to competencies, feelings, and more fluid areas, that is becoming quite dangerous for many. So it's at different levels, and not only at political level, but also at personal level. So I guess this is something also we should understand much more to help other countries not to be in the same trap.
She also told me, and is it okay to, that now, and like she said, there is a bunch of money, there is a lot of funding. Russia has a lot of oil money, right? So it gives out to those who apply, not to everybody. There's like 8,000 apply, people or organizations that apply, and only 1,500 get the funding. So if you are in your initiative, in your project, in your pilot or whatever, are going to, what's the word, to do some educational initiatives to raise patriotic awareness of the society, kids, patriotism, you know, ideology, then you will get millions of rubles of funding.
Yeah, but only the
But if
friendly
you want to-
NGOs.
Yeah, if you want to help disabled, that's tough. And they've been applying and they were not getting the funding for a number of years.
Thanks.
For example, from this, our project, which we had with IHS, it was two years ago. It was the beginning of when relationship between countries become sour. And we, for example, we received, and it's still in place, that if you invite trainers out
From abroad.
from outside, you can't have participants from state.
No.
On this training.
Private can
dangerous.
come, but government can't.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. in-
What
in
is-
Russia,
It's
in
been
Ukraine,
changed over the last year.
Strictly forbidden to invite
Western
In
society.
Russia, but in our region, Romania, Hungary, and the other countries, Bulgaria, we are members of the European Union. So if the project is funded by the EU, government officials will come to the training.
Really?
They say they don't need it. We had a really important project in 8 countries on using child-friendly language in the legal procedures, so that we can help children and of course parents and lay people better understand all this jargon, what professionals in child protection, child welfare are using. And we have developed the training, and we offered the pilot free, actually, because that's EU money. We don't pay them yet, but it's free for them. So it was, we offered it to the judges, prosecutor's office, all the custodian offices, everybody, police forces. They were not allowed to come. Yeah, so that is also something that is happening. So, and it's very scary, because then obviously they are locked into their own boxes. And as many people, many professionals in this region don't speak any foreign languages. This is a kind of additional disadvantage, because they are reading just what is available locally, meaning that, but even when it comes to the training material, so they don't have the chance to learn more and opening up a little bit the space for more information, even if they don't agree with it. They could discuss it, they could be challenged, but it's not happening.
So it's artificially
Yeah,
constructed. I mean,
yeah.
this is what we want you to
Yeah.
know. And this is all.
And you wouldn't expect it, because that is the region where progress is seemingly, yeah, ongoing. The European Union is just really pouring the money into these countries. If you look at the outcomes, very limited, very limited. Although the point is that all the EU-funded projects are free for all the 28 countries to be used. So all these training materials, all the materials are free. So in principle, they could utilize them and translate and, yeah.
We have,
yeah.
we have one person that hasn't spoken yet. Oh, and so let's do that and then we'll take a quick break, okay? Because I know I haven't given y'all a break this afternoon.
Yeah.
No, you,
Oh.
Sean.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
You worked individually.
Well, yeah. I think the major question for me is to see how I can bring subsystems together. Subsystems being in organizations such as CDTO, CWO, amongst others, and see working from that. How can we bring our forces together to create a larger system to increase our capacity and also to obviously improve our reach across the African continent? Maybe starting to touch on different countries as well, sending trainers from different places, from these organizations, different places, and have them start a system in that particular country. So I think it's a place of expansion, and as I think with that comes obvious challenges in terms of how to navigate that particular geographic, how to work that policy as well, and obviously getting enough information first off with survey analysis, seeing how we can create systems that can capture information. But that's where I think very data driven because I'm more research orientated. But I think that's not always practical. And so I think it would be good to start off with ways that we could obviously do things more practically and then maybe implement those data systems. So I think those would be the major vision plus the challenges integrated. But I think the good thing is that we're working with strong subsystems, which would be the organization's present, sure. And then to bring that together to sort of start a kind of committee and see where we could work with a vision together in a collaborative effort to sort of spread that out. That's pretty much that.
Cool. Okay. Thank you all very much for sharing. I think that we all learn from each other and get ideas from each other. So that's very important. Let's take a break. What if we say a 10-minute break? Okay, we come back at 4.
And I have jump drives. I'm bringing you all. I think I have everything on them that needs to go on. So make sure you get one. And hopefully, classes in front of you.
Which color do you
All
red. Yes, all red.
Thank you.
Sure.
You're welcome.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
We got the red one.
Oh, really?
So I will.
Maybe just put it on the table.
I don't know.
Only one. Oh yeah, everybody's got it.
We have one.
Ruby, is it one for?
One for the
One person? Then, Julie has to get one.
It should have been 11.
I put 3 over there.
Ahmed,
One
you-
for Ray and one for.
You to blame Ahmed.
Jeff.
There are 11 on here and a flash drive, so check them out, to see where they've been.
You take 1 or 2. That's Sean.
Sean's here.
But
Our library,
Yeah.
we also have a site
Yes.
There are three
So go
venues.
ahead and slide 11 and tell us through.
There, there.
Venue?
Yes.
Okay, good.
we, you know, we
Those were the situations we were in.
Is that
That brought you out of the.
Sorry?
Those were the situations that kind of brought you out.
any level of
It's really scary. Yeah, because the Prime Minister is like, he is, called out. He doesn't and he's an abuser. I've known his name since he was a student. So I was just in demand. There are a bunch of people, you know, yeah. They get me. And they are putting the scats. So the whole region is, it's really sad. After 30 years later, you see that we actually, it's fascinating.
So you're
Just
trying
like
to
in the
have
training, you
small
have to
organization.
understand how people.
For the content,
Tell me again.
Cognitive.
are you going to introduce?
Because if it's not there,
You know,
so
introduce it to you. I haven't.
that's what I'm seeing is, just like here, anymore. It's not their system.
Yes.
They don't flash their business, that they connect. And that's great. Because all these politicians can. The street is so.
They're not Russians. And so, you know, they jump right, like they have to go into the website to get them.
Well, I mean, and the evidence.
So,
Yeah, the evidence is sent
Because they don't get away with it.
and the European Union is really being,
Yeah.
and this is also again, the Hungary has been service.
So you have a
During
set.
56 years.
Yeah. One for Sue, one for, yeah, everybody. That's for him. Is that
Then
one that
Jeff has one.
even
No,
now.
it's for
Do you have a file? Oh, okay.
That's yours? Sue, you want?
International forces are somehow. That's here and there. Here, the main message is going to be that it's your responsibility. It's not a business. They stop there and they can't understand. And they are, and that is their responsibility. They are to actually give it. So when it comes to this is the healthcare system. Here I can't understand why they phrase it. It's all coming from university, that's where we start. And then, Canada, that you continent, the people are working again in this university. Yeah, but in Eastern Europe, it's the opposite. People wouldn't take care of their house because they think that they are paying health insurance. Okay, so everything should be. And my husband is a physician, and he has these patients, for instance, diabetic patients, who taking their coffee with sweet that's exactly the opposite. It's so interesting to see it as I guess we pay much more attention on not here.
Question to Brenda.
When it comes to saying these kind of cases, and the attitude that even if you are thinking of doing the this is not clear,
Yeah.
just because they don't feel like. We have this very funny story in the regions, with the European Parliament. They decided to form a circle.
Bringing it to
It's a
zero.
non-profit enterprise. And the EU is supporting very strongly mid-private areas so that they can boost their own activity. So they decided to have cheese factory in cheese. No, both. And it's relatively easy. No.
Oh, yeah. Something sweet.
Marketing. So they decide that they want to be employed and they don't want to be employed. So at the end, the mayor have to take over as a local municipality company that people rather wanted to earn less, not making and not taking fees. That's what I'm saying, that even in, when for instance, we are looking, even when we have a relatively big problem coming And so it was fascinating to learn that it never good because in India, Indonesia, and they haven't had any kind of history of employment and social security and stuff. In Eastern Europe, everybody was employed. We have no clue about unemployment or the transition. They just forbidden by the law. So even if people were not working, we called it indoor unemployment. People were employed, got some money, didn't do anything. But you couldn't die of starvation, becoming homeless practically. Which was, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a good system, it's a kind of safety net. But obviously, it's not very efficient and effective.
It just begins to improve.
So what we learned, that microfinance couldn't attract anyone because they rather rely on they feel that they are eligible. While in the region, make people really excited to start a small business and then, I mean, working together, they're just reasonable. People who are employed, it's a very paternalistic system, and he's all the so they are eligible for everything, and then they are complaining. And that's I mean, if you don't change it, then all these dictators will. They are offering this kind of.
We can change this.
Yeah.
I was that was well worth it. That was extremely helpful. It's empowering for people to hear what others are doing. It also gives them information about the estimates going on feedback and values. So that was very timely and very good. And then it anchored back in the hard stuff on boarding. It wasn't hard out of it from hard out of it's all information.
Right.
It
was heavy.
Really heavy information. But what I heard in what they did is that they bought it.
Yes.
That's what I wanted. They bought it. So that's good. I grabbed my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
So- We have an hour left.
We do quite a lot.
So So I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do as far as the supervising, monitoring of trainers and some of the support services we provide them. I have given you in your package some resources that will help you that talk about the approval process. You can look at those, implement what works for your system. These are just the things that we do, okay? And you for yourself will decide what it is that you would want to do with your trainers. And so I also gave you a handout. All trainers receive this 2-page thing that says trainer responsibilities. That's kind of what you were talking about, Sean, is their commitment to what we say are the rules. And then if we're having issues, then we have something to go back to that says, remember this, it is your responsibility to take care of these things. So again, that's for your reference, and we won't go over those things. I appreciate your openness to discussing your perspectives and your world. I think all of us learn from each other, and that's always valuable. And I think what I take from it is that everyone is unique and different, and you all are very capable people for creating systems that are going to work in your worlds. And so thank you for sharing the information. So we're blurry again. Oh, wait a minute. I have to see if it's my eyes that are blurry. It was my eyes. I was blurry because I took my glasses off. Okay, so observation is one of our primary ways that we monitor what's going on in our training environment. And we have, and I believe I put in your packet, if not, I can make it available to you, a pretty extensive form that we use for observation. I don't remember if I put it in your packet or not, but if not, I will make sure that you all get it electronically. You might not want to use something that extensive, but it gives you some ideas. The observer fills it out. The reason why we did that is we wanted an standardized observation. We want our observers to have a guide for the things that we want them to look at. And we look at their skills in presentation, even, how they interact with trainees as they are coming into the room, how they present their material, if they use different forms of learning and not just one, where the folks engage, okay? If it's a standardized training, married to the content, in the observations, we look at that. Did they teach the content and was it complete? And that's important. So if I didn't put it in, I will make sure that you get a copy of it. Is that in there? Okay. That's easy to get for you all. So all trainers are observed and we train them. We have a schedule that we've set up within our trainer development work team where we sign up for different workshops that we're going to observe. And we do it in the different regions. And it's the regional staff and it's IHS staff. And sometimes we contract with people to be observers also. So someone will observe a training. We always let the trainer know ahead of time that we're going to be there and that we're going to be observing. After the workshop, we give them some instant feedback about the things that we observed, but then we also follow it up with a report to them that talks about their strengths, and then the areas where they might want to do some work for that particular workshop, or if there's some particular skills that they need to work on in presentation. So that's what happens with our observations. The other tool that we use is evaluation. And that's where eTrack has helped us, our learning management system. Because the way that it works is that when someone signs up for a training, once that session has been closed, they receive an evaluation via online that they fill out and then send it back to us.
Is it automatic?
It's automatic. They get a notice saying, you know, your evaluation is ready for you to fill out. And they fill it out and send it in. We also have paper evaluations because sometimes we work with participants who are not in our system. So we have those available in paper also that they can fill out and send back. We are required by our licensing board to have evaluations. And so that is a requirement, but it also is something that we use. The regional training center staff will read those. If there are any issues or concerns that have to be addressed, they address them, or we address them in partnership with them. But we like to address them as soon as they happen so that they can be taken care of. It also gives us, there's a question in our evaluation that addresses training needs. And so if there's a particular area that a participant feels strongly that they would like some training in, they can put it in that evaluation. And that kind of also helps us in identifying training needs. So that's a very good piece to have in any evaluation that you set up for your own training environment. But I think it's really a very important thing for you to establish in your systems right up front, is that gives you an automatic feedback about how that training is going. So it's really important to have those available for your participants. When we used to do them by paper, we would cut our training 15 minutes shorter so that they could fill out their evaluations before they left. Because it's better to do it then than to have them send it back later, because you might never get those.
Is it usually a generic question like divine? Would you rate?
Yeah, we have a generic evaluation, and that is what we use for all our specialized and related workshops. And then we have in our core ones, they usually have more specific evaluations that really ask very direct questions about the content, because we want to ensure that they are learning what we need them to learn before they go out in the field. And so those questions might be more directed to the content, the specific content of the curriculum.
In our context, people prefer to express verbally than writing. They
And
express very well.
yeah, I think that, when we've done, because we've done like, we've done groups where we've talked, especially when we're piloting curriculum. And what we do is we get a person who is not the trainer to facilitate that session and to ask the questions. Again, we would have a very specific list of questions that we would ask, but we get it verbally.
So are you going to record it? Or?
We can record it, or we can have someone that takes the notes. And that has been effective. So, again, an understanding of what works the best in your world. If that's, if you're for more oral traditions where people want to talk about it, as long as you have an unbiased, objective person asking the questions. It's a little more difficult if you have a trainer ask questions.
Is this in front of the trainer or?
No, the trainer would lead. That way people feel comfortable answering the questions.
Another technical question. So, trainers actually do report for like when they finish.
Yeah, we have a trainer feedback survey where trainers can give us feedback also. We have that electronically also. We have
It's a part
like a
of
web
the-
form
the-
that they fill out and send it back.
But not with the training management system.
No, that one is separate. It's a web form that comes to our system. And so it goes to the regional training center and it goes to IHS. And again, that one is voluntary. So some trainers are good at doing it and some are not.
So technically, like when they finish giving that training, that's we are done.
Yes. Yes. So sometimes that's where we learn about concerns that participants have. And so then the RTCs will explore, maybe have conversations with other participants and see if it was a personal issue or if there was an issue that they need to address that impacted the whole training. The other thing that we do is we provide technical assistance. If a trainer is having difficulties in an area of skill, then we work with that trainer to help them develop the skill. If there's an issue, then we help them address it so that it doesn't become an issue. For example, we recently had a trainer that we received concerns in several of his trainings that he was making some inappropriate comments that were offending people. He didn't intend to offend people. You know, he was using, if you're a trainer that likes to use humor, you have to be really careful that your humor does not offend someone. And he was not aware that even though there was people that were really enjoying his humor, there were other people that were getting offended. And that was becoming a barrier in his training environment. And so we had a conversation with him, an intervention. We had him do some reading, and we monitored for a while to make sure that he had taken that into consideration when he was doing his training. So that kind of assistance we provide. And then we have trainer development activities. One of the things that we have is field experience, because sometimes we have trainers that they get to the point where all they do is train. They're no longer working in the field, and you kind of lose your edge, And so we have, for folks who have been out of the field for 3 years or more, they are required to do a field experience. And what that means is they are required to either shadow a foster family or a worker in their job, or attend certain trainings, but it's some kind of experience that brings them back to what the field is like. Because if you've been out of the field for 5 years, the field has changed. And some of the stories that you have become irrelevant. You want to be relevant. You want to say, you want to have a case scenario or share a story that the people that you're training are going to be able to relate to now. So for those folks, you create opportunities for them to catch up, yes, in a sense. So we do monitoring, development, and technical assistance with all of our trainers. And again, based on their individual needs. And sometimes we use our trainer competencies to kind of guide us. I know in diversity, in the diversity training that we do, one of the first things they do before they come to the training is they have to do an assessment of their competencies, their diversity competencies. And so we have a list of questions for them to answer so that by the time they come to the workshop, they know where their gaps are. And we can talk about some of those things in the training. Or if they need some extra technical assistance, we can provide that at that time. So that's a good way to use competencies. have them look at if there's a certain set of skill set that they are struggling with, is to ask them some questions about the competencies and gives you a better understanding.
Do you perhaps have something similar to that in terms of the competencies, like a sort of questionnaire to assess those competencies for the trainers?
We don't have it for the trainers, we do have it for the workers. We have what we call individualized training needs assessment that is done in partnership with the supervisor and the worker. But it helps identify what their training needs will be for that year. Mhm. So aside from that, we also provide them some support. Every year we have a trainer conference. Ours is coming up this April. And it's a whole day of our trainers becoming learners.
So you say at the conference, it's the entire state come together.
Yes. We have our conference here in Columbus, and we invite all the trainers to come to the conference. We usually have a particular topic that we select that is going to be the theme. And for example, this year we went to the National Staff Training and Development Conference, and they introduced us to a team learning model for doing training, which we feel is an excellent one for us to begin to embrace. So this year, we're going to focus our conference on that model. And we're going to have the people who are the experts to come in and, number one, in our keynote, take us to the awareness and knowledge. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have kind of like learning labs where they're going to actually implement the model so that they get a better understanding of it. So each year it's different with different topics. And it's a day for trainers. It also is a day where we have recognition of trainers who have excelled and get awards. And it's just a time for us to say thank you to trainers. It's also very important, you know, if you have trainers that are volunteers, it's a way to thank them for their work. And it gives them something that they don't have to pay for. And so that's one of the things that we do. We have a newsletter, it's called Common Ground, that comes out 3 times a year. It's an electronic letter, so no matter where they're at, they get it on their email, and it has news and information about the training system. Sometimes we have tidbits for them, ideas that they can use in their training, articles that we have found that might be helpful, those kinds of things. It's another way to help them hone in on skill development and also know what's going on. I mean, we are a big system, and so it helps them. We recognize trainers who have done special things during that quarter, those kinds of things. We make announcements of new training needs or new workshops that have been developed. So it's our way of communicating with our trainers.
How long have you been having your annual training?
Before I came, Ruby,
I don't know, a long time, I really don't know how long.
it's been at least 20 some years.
How many trainers?
We have, right now we have probably about over 250, between 250 and 260. Not all of them come, but it is available to anyone who wants it. And it has been going for a long time. We have a listserv also where we have special announcements. You know, that one's a little, what I call nimble, as needed. You know, when we have something in particular that we want to let them know, we have everyone on the listserv and we can send out information to them. I think that that works out really well. Our website has a whole section on trainer resources. Have y'all seen our website?
Yes.
Nothing. There's a whole section that is trainer resources. There's information for trainers. And that's something that trainers can access. The other thing is content-specific emails. Some of our content experts will send out emails when articles come out about their topic. Sally Fitch is really good at sending out things to the trainers that train in the area of sexual abuse. So, you know, she wants to help trainers stay up to date with the literature. So when there's when there's an article or a book, she will send out an email to them and say, hey, check this out. It's got some good stuff. She might give a summary of it, or she might attach the article to it. So that's one way to help your trainers stay up to date with what's out there and what's happening in the profession. So some of these things are relatively easy to do. You know, you can have, you know, your conference can be a workshop that you offer, you know, once a year on something. It doesn't have to be all day, but just something that gives trainers some information also and helps them be learners also. So those are some of the things. Any questions or comments? No? So there's, of course, like everything else, challenges and limitations and strengths to our system. Because our system, even though we've been in existence, I think we celebrated our 30th anniversary last year. We're still growing, and there are still some limitations. But you know, decentralization always brings challenges because you kind of have to let go of some of the control, and that's what happens sometimes in our system, especially with the RTC autonomy. You know, they make decisions that are best for their area, and that's what their purpose is. And sometimes there's differences in what they think they need and what other RTCs think they need. So there has to be a lot of negotiation about how are we going to maintain standardization and still meet the individual needs of regions and counties. And I think that's something that in any kind of training system will continue to be a challenge. But I think that it's worth the challenge. The other thing is the challenge that comes with having trainers develop their own workshops. When we have a standardized curriculum, we have more control over the content and the structure of that curriculum. And when we release that power for someone else to develop a workshop, then they are creating what their vision is. And it might not necessarily be exactly how we would do it, right? But we have to learn what the parameters are and how much we're able to give and take on those. And that's why you set up your parameters. That's what policies and procedures and expertise and all that help you do, is at the end of the day, let go of some of that power to the trainer to do what they need to do. Because again, they are the experts of their content. Where the strength, I think, is in the independent contractors. I think that it keeps your system energized and vibrant because it brings differing perspectives and different experiences. And so when you have a system that has only one way of doing things, it becomes kind of like monovision. And you might lose out on things that are very important because you're seeing everything from your system's perspective and not allowing there to be the flexibility of other perspectives. So I think that is one of the strengths of having independent contractors. The other thing about independent contractors is you have a flat rate if you pay them, and everyone knows what they're going in for. You know, it's like at the beginning, you know, when I talked about, so you want to be a trainer, they've gone there, they've seen what it's going to be, what their expectations are going to be, what they can expect back, what their rate is going to be. Because one of the things I don't know in your world, but in my world, when we're recruiting trainers, sometimes trainers come with ideas of what they should get paid. And we unfortunately live in a system where we have a limited amount of resources and we can only give what we can only give. Our RTCs are given a certain number of monies that they use for training a year, and they can't go past that. So they determine based on their monies how many trainings they're able to offer. And so it's figured out according to what they would pay the trainer, which is their cost. And so everyone needs to be paid the same, because if people were paid at different amounts, that would create chaos in our system. So then, you know, in your system, thinking about if you're not paying a flat rate that you would say is payment, you could call it a stipend, you know, or a gratuity. You can call it different things, because you can have volunteers that you may give a gratuity to that is not the same as if you were giving a flat rate payment. So that's something to think about in your world.
Is it per day or training?
Per hours.
Per hour.
They get paid by, usually our trainings are either 3 hours or 6 hours. So the payment is based on the 3 hours, it's one payment, or 6 hours is another payment. Now, some workshops, like the 4-day workshops, each 6 hour segment, we get paid. And the strength of local trainers, I think, for me, that's invaluable. One of the things that I don't know if I mentioned before is that when you get local trainers, they are best familiar with the culture of the environment where they're training. And I think, to me, that's invaluable. If they know what the issues are in that particular region or area, they can tailor their training to address those issues. Rural versus urban, you know, the very different worlds. How they do their work is different. Even though you have to stay true to the content, you have to also consider the differences within the context of where you're training. And I think that's the advantage of having local trainers, because they can do that in the best way possible. The other thing that I think is a strength is that we're using trainers. We're really focusing on getting trainers who are in the field. And so they know the field, they know the challenges that foster parents, adopted parents, workers have, because they are working with them on a day-to-day basis, or they're living it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that just enriches the learning. And when you have folks that have the expertise and the knowledge, then they are available to you as a resource to help with developmental projects. You know, we use trainers to help us develop standardized workshops. So once you know the capacity of the trainer, it might be someone that you can use as a resource to help you develop standardized curriculum in your area. And not only does that help you in developing that curriculum, but you've also developed a trainer for that curriculum. And so, that's an advantage also. So, those are the things that I think about.
No, I just sneezed, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Does anyone have any questions?
There's the IHS website, and then there's the OCWTP.
Yeah, it's two different websites. The IHS website has information about our organization, the Institute for Human Services. The Ohio Child Welfare Training Program, which is what OCWTP stands for, is for the state of Ohio and all the things that we do as a training system in the state of Ohio. So that's what its focus is.
So the resources on the IHS are also likely to be on the.
But when I was talking about the trainer resources, those are in the ocwtp.net.
And they're not on each of the sites, so you're not gonna find them in IHS website. You'll find a link though,
Yeah.
but you won't find the resources there.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned who do we train? Maybe I missed it. People like policemen and the lawyers. Do we ever train them?
We have a certain population that we are mandated to train. And that includes caseworkers for child protective services, their supervisors, foster parents that are part of the state foster care system, and adoptive parents. Those are the population that we're mandated to train. Now, sometimes, because in our world, we have county foster parents, and then we have private agencies that have foster parents. If we have space available, we will allow some of the private agencies to come in, but the priority has to be the county foster parents. The private agencies, they receive funding to train their foster parents.
So they train and they do the follow-up with foster families? Or
In the counties?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The counties have foster care workers that work with the families. They have foster parent recruiters, and people who do the assessments for families that are coming into the system. And Kelly and her crew tomorrow will give you a lot more information about those systems, because that's where they do a lot of their work. But those are we don't normally train like police officers or judges unless the state mandates us to, for a particular project, then we might. And sometimes some of the regional training centers, because they're connected to a county, have like two roles. They have the role of being a training center for Ohio Child Welfare Training Program, and then they have a piece that is for their county, and they might train other people within the context of that. But in our system, we're very close.
We had a policeman come to one of our trainings. We had the ZRP, it was a representative from our police department came to one of our trainings, so one at HTC, and he said we should bring this training to the police, because with their handling with kids in crisis, often kids are taken to a police station. And the way that they process them has such a huge impact on the kids. So to bring even trauma one into the police department.
I
We
think
train
that's,
that to first responders
Yeah.
in the US.
The trauma one, yeah.
First responders are pretty good across the US.
and I think that's the beauty of your system. You determine, which populations are the populations that you want to prioritize, with the understanding that you have to start somewhere, but you might want to expand, or there might be a particular group of people that you think would really benefit from your training, and so then you add the invitation, but maybe you also work with them to partner with you. Any other questions?
So
We've talked a lot.
Sorry to take you back a bit, but I just wanted to go back to your conference. For example, you spoke about maybe a topic that will be discussed. How do you come about this topic? Is it because of the issues that you've been dealing with during your training, or is that just a random topic that comes up?
It comes several ways. Sometimes we identify trends in training that, for example, in one of our conferences, we're starting to see the trend of the use of technology in the classroom. And so we determined that we should focus on what are some of the ways that we can use technology in the classroom, because we know that a lot of our participants are really benefiting from technology. And so how can we use technology to get them more engaged? I think was one of the things. The other thing is initiatives that the state has, the Child Protective Services. For example, one year we did CATMUS, which we've talked about several times. And so our whole conference was focused on helping trainers know more about CATMUS and what that meant to the training that they provided in the system. Sometimes we ask the trainers, are there particular areas that you would like us to offer in the conference? And sometimes we go to the national conferences and we identify things that we think are important to bring back to Ohio, and we'll use that. Sometimes in a conference, we'll have a theme, but we have workshops that are of different topics. They're not always like we're gonna do this year, where we're gonna focus the whole conference on one topic. So we might have, I think last year we had, we have we use a lot of technology in the classroom, and we have trainers at different levels of skill for using technology. So we had a workshop that we offered for trainers who needed more basic foundational skills for the computer, like how to connect it to the projector, or how to use a flash drive. I mean, because there are trainers that really don't have that ability. And what we were finding in our regional training centers was that it was taking a lot of the staff time to come in and troubleshoot for them things that they really could do themselves if we could teach them. And so they offered that, and it was very well received. PowerPoint, we really are moving towards more visual PowerPoints rather than all the words in visual. And so we offered a workshop on how to develop a PowerPoint in a way that was more engaging of the audience. We're doing a lot with online training, and so trainers have really responded to trainings that we've developed for that. And so many ways and forms. I think, like, for example, Kelly, who's coming tomorrow, her focus is trauma. And so she would like us next year to focus our conference on trauma and the brain. And it's an excellent idea. I mean, everyone really is focused on that. All trainers would benefit from that, Because no matter what you're training, the population you're training about has suffered trauma. And a better understanding of trauma is only gonna enhance whatever it is that you're training. So that's kind of, it just kind of evolves. We decide on a topic, we look for the experts that can provide the training, and then we offer. The other thing that we offer is ethics, because a lot of our trainers are social workers, and they're required every 2 years to have ethics training. This year, we're not gonna offer it because we're focusing totally on that one topic, but that's one that's very popular with our trainers.
How many people do you usually gather in your conference?
Probably like 80 to 100. So, and one of the things that we ask RTCs, or the regional training centers, is not to schedule any workshops that day, so that the trainers are free to come. But then our trainers sometimes work with other systems and they'll go train anyway. So, but we really hope that they will come, so we try to facilitate that as much as possible. It's always the second Monday of April, so they already know that's every year, that's what it's gonna be. It's always in the same hotel, so we try to make it as consistent as possible so that we can break down barriers.
This is exclusive for your training.
It's only trainers that are OCW. Any other questions? I thank you very, very much for your attention today and for your participation. I really admire the work that you're doing, and I know that some of you are doing it in spite of a lot of difficulties and a lot of barriers. And but I think that the valuable thing is that you have a starting point, and that you have a passion for what you're doing, and that really takes you a long way. And so I wish you well, whichever directions you take. And there is no wrong direction. If it's the direction for your system, it's the right direction. And so I wish you well.
Thank you very much. Good day, good information. We are done a little bit early, and your assignment, you're all anxious to get out.
You have 2 assignments today.
So you can get to your homework now. So you can play tonight.
Actually, you're gonna be given a break. There is no assignment for tonight.
Wow.
Yeah. We are done a little bit early. I'm not going to make you listen to more information. We're gonna actually be done. Your rides won't be here till 5, so you have a chance to maybe socialize a little bit.
Actually, Sally's here.
Oh, Sally's here. Well, you still have a little time to socialize if you want to. You can also meet with Sally as well. So tomorrow, what we're doing, Kelly is going to be here again with her team in the morning. We'll look at kinship, foster care, and adoption. And then afternoon, we're going to the regional training center here in Franklin County. And you'll get a chance to really see it in operation, which is kind of exciting and fun. And
Really
then
nice people.
and meet people. And tomorrow night, then we're going to have our cultural dinner at Judy's. And that's all being planned and prepared for. So Lynn and Sally will be transporting you along with, I'm not sure who, but to the RTC tomorrow. I'm going home with Judy to help prepare for dinner tomorrow night. Are you
Me
helping
too,
transport?
I'm going to Judy's.
You're going to help cook as well, or help get things ready? And then on Friday, our day on Friday will be in the morning, we're gonna look at change management, a couple little things maybe that we haven't been able to catch this week that we wanted to. Lots of kinds of questions and answers, and then Friday afternoon, we're really gonna put together the plans that you've done, want you to put together to go home and to just fine tune anything you wanna fine tune. By the way, I need, keep in mind, I do need your plans, as you're getting your plans done so that we can get them on a document. And, what's that? Yes, yeah. So your first one was on family-based care, your second one was looking at developing a training system, And then what we'll do tomorrow or Friday, we'll kind of do the final one, look at, kind of putting it all together for the steps. And then also identifying what you might need from us to go forward. And looking at the future. All right, any questions for today? Anything else? Are you exhausted?
No.
We want more.
Staff will have a coaching.
I know, you're gonna get one, it's great. Well, I really thank you for being as attentive as you were, and your reporting out this afternoon was spectacular and very encouraging to one another. I think it was really a good moment. So, we're done. You're done for the evening.
Thank you.
And, Sean, you need to let Sally know you're not going home with her. Good. Fine. I guess we'll go.
Sally's pulling up to the front door.
Is she?
Long day.
We should do something.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you.
We see you.
No, I'm headed back to Indiana.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Y'all were very, very good on. Very good.
See you.
Willingly.
We call the others, we call them prisoners. The ones that
You can
are
tell
forced to